every other healthcare experience has trained you to expect long appointments. 60 minutes of physical therapy, 45 minutes of occupational therapy. The longer the session, the more thorough it must be, right? So when you watch your chiropractor make an adjustment that lasts under 2 minutes or only 15 minutes, your brain probably throws up a red flag. Wait, that's it? That's the right question to ask, but the answer flips everything you've been taught about healing on its head. A neurologically focused adjustment isn't shorter because it's doing less. It's shorter because of how powerfully the nervous system responds to precise input, and adding more would actually overwhelm an already overloaded system. So once you understand the real mechanism behind what happens during those 2 minutes, the entire concept of time on the table stops being the right yardstick. So what looks short is actually doing something extraordinary, and the proof shows up in the hours and the days that follow. One of the most powerful examples that our profession has ever documented didn't happen in a chiropractic office. I'm going to share a little bit about my experience too, but this was a documented case. It happened inside a level 3 NICU. A newborn baby boy had suffered a traumatic birth that included a whiplash type injury to his upper neck and brainstem. So it was a hypoxic brain injury in a condition called PPHN, or persistent pulmonary hypertension of the newborn. And because he was hooked up to every machine and monitor that you can imagine, the neurophysiological impact of those first gentle adjustments was visible in real time. His heart rate started to come down, his respiration improved, his oxygen levels rose, his whole body relaxed and released that locked-in tension. And here's the thing, what happened in that NICU isn't a one-time story. It's the same thing that happens quietly every single time a child gets a neurologically focused adjustment. You just can't always see it spelled out on a monitor the way that it was that day when they documented that. Now, some of you may have heard my story, probably not, but my son was born 40 weeks on time, 40 weeks and 2 days actually, and he was born healthy. Healthy birth, everything was going great, and I noticed he was breathing a little bit faster than usual though. And about 3 weeks in, he got sick. Little did we know that he had 2 holes in his heart, and he ended up having to get open heart surgery. But around 3 weeks old, he ended up getting really sick. It was just a flu. It passed through everybody else in our family really quickly, but it hit my son really hard, and we didn't really know why, because we didn't know about his heart defect yet. So we ended up in the hospital. It was a 9-day stay, and a couple days in, he was just, they couldn't understand why, because they didn't know about his heart defect yet. They couldn't understand why his heart, his respiratory rate would not come down. And so when you're in mom mode trying to I was just going in for a checkup. I did not expect to be staying at the PICU, but that's where we were. So a couple days in, I'm like, wait, let me adjust him, right? Let me adjust him. It's very light, very gentle, using my little pinkies, and it's just like the lightest touch. And so while I was feeding him, I gave him an adjustment, and he was hooked up to all the monitors, and I could see the monitors changing in real time, just like this documented case. I didn't know about the documented case at the time though. And so I was seeing this, and his respiration rate was coming down, and I didn't tell anyone at the hospital what I did, but later in the night, they were able to take him down a dose on his oxygen, and the next day we were able to go into a regular unit instead of staying in the PICU, because it helped his system unwind that stress that he was holding onto. This poor guy, he had to have like an oxygen mask and everything else. And then we found out that they found out at that visit that he had a heart defect, and then several weeks later, they told us, just come back in 6 months, we'll check his heart. But a couple weeks later, we find out that I just noticed he wouldn't stop breathing faster than normal, and it turns out his heart was working really, really hard with 2 holes in his heart. But and he ended up getting open heart surgery, and I adjusted him all the way through and through his recovery and everything else. But I share that because that was my own experience with it. It was incredible to see the impact that a neurological focused chiropractic adjustment made on my son and the recovery. It was like we turned the corner when I made that adjustment, and I continued to adjust him after that, but we really turned a corner once I helped his system adapt and unwind some of that stress that he was holding on to. So I share that because that was my own personal experience with it. So first, an adjustment isn't what you think it is. Let's start by clearing this up, because that pop or crack sound you hear, it's just gas releasing from the joint capsules. And actually in my office, I don't even do popping or cracking. I have a specialty in network spinal, which is very light, gentle touches. And then I'm trained in about a dozen other techniques that help unwind the nervous system. But hearing a sound or not definitely has no effect on, nothing to do with if the adjustment worked or not. The real action isn't structural at all. It's the precise neurological signal that the structure sends to the brain. So it's a specific input that activates mechanoreceptors and proprioceptors packed into the paraspinal muscles, which carry the highest density of muscle spindles anywhere in the body. And that sensory burst races up the spinal cord to the brainstem, cerebellum, and prefrontal cortex, giving the brain a clean read on the body's position, tension, and tone. So the actual goal here is to correct that misalignment, which we call subluxation. That's a 3-part pattern that includes physical misalignment, joint fixation, and neurological interference between the brain and body. For children, the pressure we use is comparable to checking the ripeness of an avocado. Now, for adults, it's also very gentle. There is nothing going on where we're forcing anything, but it's very age appropriate, especially for children. Now, one small input affects the entire nervous system. The adjustment delivers a controlled burst of neurosensory input that the brain uses to recalibrate how it processes information from the body. That signal reaches the brainstem, which is the region that controls your heart rate, breathing, digestion, and arousal, and the foundational systems running every minute of every day. The vagus nerve and parasympathetic system engage, shifting the body out of sympathetic dominance, the chronic fight or flight state that most dysregulated kids are stuck in. And here's what the research shows. A 2016 study published in Neuroplasticity showed adjustments produce measurable changes in prefrontal cortex activity. That's the region responsible for executive function, attention, and autonomic regulation. This is exactly why one adjustment can affect things that seem unrelated, like sleep, digestion, immunity, emotional regulation. The nervous system is in control of all of it. So this is also why children with very different diagnoses often share the same underlying pattern of dysautonomia, which is why the same foundational care helps so many of them. Now, here's why pediatric adjustments are short by design. And adult adjustments are a little bit longer. They're usually about 15 minutes, but children's are pretty short. A child's nervous system can only absorb so much sensory input before it becomes overwhelmed and starts shutting down. Think of it like a computer with too many tabs open. When too many programs run at once, everything slows down or crashes. A child stuck in sympathetic dominance is already swamped by school, screens, sensory input, food sensitivities, which leaves minimal spare processing capacity. So adding 30 to 60 minutes of hands-on input wouldn't be more thorough. It would actually trigger the same meltdown response that parents see at the dentist or after a long therapy session. So a precise input takes roughly 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Then the brain spends the next 24 to 72 hours doing the actual work of releasing stuck stress patterns. And it's the same with adults. I tell adults 24 to 48 hours to continue to unwind through your system. So sometimes the most healing thing we can do is to give the nervous system less to process and not more. So this is why frequency beats duration every time. The brain rewires through neuroplasticity, and neuroplasticity has one rule: repetition. A foundational 2008 paper outlined that repetition, specificity, and intensity drive lasting neural change, not duration of a single session. So here's a number that puts this in perspective. There are 168 hours in a week. A child receives about 6 minutes of table time, let's say, across 2 to 3 visits. That leaves roughly 167 hours and 54 minutes happening between visits. And those hours can work for the child or it can work against them. So high frequency keeps the release ahead of the reload from stress, growth spurts, illness, and sensory overload. So remember this: the adjustment is the catalyst. The brain does the healing between visits. Fifth, how insight scans make the invisible visible. We don't guess, we test. Insight scans measure nervous system function through 3 objective tools: HRV, surface EMG, and thermal scanning. HRV shows how adaptable the autonomic nervous system is and reveals vagal tone. Surface EMG reveals whether a child is stuck on the gas pedal or showing fatigue patterns. And thermal scanning shows where autonomic dysregulation is concentrated along the spine. Here's why this matters. 2 children with the same diagnosis can show completely different scan patterns, which is why personalization has to happen at the neurological level, not the symptomatic one. The scans guide care planning, technique selection, primary subluxation targeting. We really look at the scans to see if you or your child have been through what they need to go through. So every protocol, every supplement, every therapy is the missing piece that still feels like it's something deeper. There's a reason. The foundation is neurological, and the right input delivered to the right place at the right frequency is what can help shift the entire trajectory. Your child doesn't need more labels, they need answers. So to get started with neurologically focused chiropractic care, click the link in the description of this video, send me a DM, schedule directly with the link in the description, and we will make sure to get you your consult, your scans, and have a really good plan moving forward to help you find the foundation of healing for you or your child. I'm Dr. Michelle Green. Thanks for checking this out.